Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Shire cast. I do apologise, but a bit late because my internet is not so great. It keeps on cutting in and out. So if I suddenly disappear or the stream stops and it goes to like a black screen, that's probably what's happened. And I will try and um, reconnect as soon as possible. So with that being said, let's get on with today's topic. So I want to talk about. I was going to cover three things. So, like the state of local libraries, the AFD proposed ban, or the idea of banning the AFD in Germany, and cashless society. So, the state of local libraries. So, recently, I went. Fortunately, I still live somewhere where the library is still open, and I used to go there quite. I used to go there now and then. Used to get like a couple books or something. Um, mainly like history things that certain books that it's difficult to get, and it had my local library had a really good stock inventory of um these sorts of fiction, non-fiction. It's quite a big library indeed, and I went there. Last time I went there, I think, was probably before lockdown. It was probably like 2019. um and I decided, as I was passing the other day. It was raining. I thought, well, I need to really get in. I thought I'd go into the library and see what it's like, and I I enjoyed. Usually when I was there, I would go into the history section. So it'd be categorized of like British history, ancient history, and European history. Um, and beforehand, the British history one had a lot of good books on history that related to my local area. Um, and then, of course, like with you'd have your books on World War II, medieval time, Crusades, um, the usual, the Vikings, the usual sorts of stuff, and then like the early European stuff. You might have your odd book on, you know, the 7 Years' War or something like that. So there was a good selection, and I went in there. And the first thing that I saw going through the doors was on the community board. You had like this huge charity drive for for um, Ukraine. Fighters in Ukraine, but also their families here. There was going to be like a big cultural day celebrating um, Ukrainian culture. Uh, and then you had your you know trans alliance stuff, your global American stuff, um you know there was like an event for minority voices. So you had like on the public sort of the village notice board, you had all the edicts passed down from um our masters. So that was that was so my initial initial reaction to all of it. I then went into the library, and I went to the history section. And number one, the stock had been heavily um, heavily reduced. Hello, Joe, in chat. Welcome. Um, it'd been reduced, and I could tell from a distance. There weren't as many books uh, in that section in the history section. And so I went over, and so I'll start off with the British history section. In the British history section, every book was about prime ministers from Tony Blair to present. Well, minus Rishi Sunak. There was no books there, but you had Tony Blair, you had Gordon Brown, You had David Cameron, Boris Johnson, quite a few Tony Blairs, and then you fucking Alistair Campbell had a trilogy, a trilogy of books, all there. And then in between that, you had like a Meghan Markle biography, and then I think the rest of the space was taken up by our late Queen. So that was the full extent of British history in that regard. In European history, it was Adolf Hitler and Napoleon Bonaparte. There was just books on Adolf Hitler, very like psycho sort of analyzing of Hitler and his mind. The books on Napoleon were a bit more flattering. And hello, Iron Duke. Good morning to you. Yeah, so they were a bit more flattering for Napoleon. There wasn't really any. I think there was one book there you could. There was one that was more critical of him about being a not liberal or something, which is, I mean, yeah, whatever. Forget that he was a diehard Jacobin and was a bit of a scumbag in his early life. But anyway, that being said, the next bit on so that was European history. There was a bit, of course, a bit on the Soviets and Stalin. Um, so like the trifecta of evil. Oh, I think there was also one on Mussolini as well. There was like one small book on Mussolini, but most of the shelves were taken up by Hitler and the Nazi Party and all the characters. Military history section. Iron Duke, I don't believe there was a military history section there before. I was looking for that. There used to be one, but I don't believe it's there. It's all been the three sections you got is British history, European history, and ancient history, antiquity, which is probably more close to that. And the antiquity one, which was the other one, which was this was the best bit. So, and ancient history or antiquity, as it used to be called, they've renamed it ancient history. So, comprised of Dan Snow and Mary Beard. Only those two. It was a very small section. You had Mary Beard on her Rome. The Romans were very diverse. They loved all this gay shit. They couldn't get enough of it. Which is true, I guess, in some regards. But no, they were diverse. They were very open. They were a liberal society. Everyone could be their own sovereign. They were. Rome wasn't really a nation. It was a propositional state. Anybody could live in Rome. It's not like the Romans had any standards or any sort of unique class structure that would prevent that. But so yeah, there was that book, and then you had like Dan Jones on, sorry, Dan Snow on, his usual sort of atheist revisionist position on many people in history. Iron Duke says, yeah, every library used to have a military naval history section. Yeah, I think they used to be, but it's not there anymore. I think it's been replaced by like some travel information. I mean, the library used to be excellent. Used to have like an entire local history section. It was like a whole floor. You could just find out, detailed information about local history, like even down to like town maps and everything. I think they still got them, but they're not open to the public like they used to be. So, I mean, so yeah, that was that. Of course, and ancient history. Um, um, Ancient history also comprised of. I'm just trying to think. What was one of the book there that was. Was it, uh, oh yeah, Stephen Fry Mythos, his Greek mythology book. um, which is strange because I would have expected to be under sort of like mythologies or anyway. So that was included in that. So overall, it you know it the everything, and this was something I was thinking about, is the library. And then when I asked one of the librarians, I just said, I said the history section is looking a bit bare. And I said, how come? And they said, well, it came down to demand. Not many people were. This is from what she was saying, that not many people were um, taking from the history section, and that there, certain this was, we had all these new sort of books and everything, which were more popular and everything. And what was amazing is all the things that were popular was exactly that the the modern state wishes to push on us. So um, it's no coincidence, because it's not like uh, a grassroots sort of um, popular will interest in, say, Tony Blair and everything. It's because everything we are and we do is within and is politically, our nation is in the framing of Tony Blair and his legacy as prime minister. Um, Alistair Campbell today is still a major political and, or mainly media personality now, and again holds large influential sway across the media and political landscape, like he did back 20 odd years ago. Um, of course, Meghan Markle, she is the darling of uh, race, uh, you know, race grifters and um, anti-white dickheads in this country, in America. Um, and it's amazing because if you looking at that, it was like a selection of all the crap that you see in modern Britain today, that you see on the media, or you see being plastered across several uh, pages and pages of newspapers, and your Facebook page, or your Twitter page, or whatever. It's everything that is constantly pushed by the media, pushed down our throats. And um, it and the thing though is that this was removed because it is effectively keeping keeping the public detached from their local history, from their local traditions. And as Jonathan Bowden said, he said in one of his speeches, to read uh, is radical. To read the past is radical. And so going out and searching for you know something beyond that of which is handed down to us by up top, by the current elites, is that radical step. And Vingal in chat, he comes up, and so he says, you reminded that the scourging of the Shire was when Merry and Pippin and the boys set things straight. And for me, this is something I do think, you know it, this is something that has to be fought against. And so what I've done is I've with people I know in the local council, the parish, and everything. I've put together, a way of having a better range selection. And the trouble is, I have to word this in the way, because I can't just say, "Oh, get rid of all this gay crap" or whatever, because that gets us nowhere. But I'm writing about getting a better range of selection for people to read. And then, of course, a lot of the libraries, their thing is, well, we need to get young people to read, and get young people, and I'm expecting the usual. Young people won't be interested in this, that, or the other, or some the Anglo-Saxons, or the Normans, or everything. And it's like, well, of course they would be. I mean, they love Game of Thrones, they love all that sort of medieval intrigue and stuff. I mean, it's a very popular thing. People love that sort of stuff. But the problem is, it's any sorts of that sort of history of heroics as well. And you notice it's always the ones. Um, if you want, oh, I'm Duke. Yes, I will invite you on if you are available. I can definitely do that. Um, so hold on, I'll send you an invite on Discord. But Vingle says libraries are obliged to take books if you request them, right? They are here, I believe. Uh, I don't know. If I have to, you see, I did have right back along. I did have like I did donate books to the library when I was quite young. It was usually books that I've either read or sort of outgrown, children's books. And if I remember correctly, they accepted some, but not others. Usually because they thought either they usually had this is right back along though. Either they had it or they thought it, they didn't. They had to prioritize space for others or something. So I don't know. But yeah, they should do definitely. Um, Trouble is, a lot like the library itself. It's very much directed by the council, and the council, you know, no matter, and this is something why I don't believe in the based rural council, because I can tell you now it's absolute bloody fantasy. Every council, every node of governance in this country is completely captured by hostile by a hostile ideology. It is completely captured. Just sending it to you now, Iron Duke. I do apologise because my internet has been poor. People watching. Uh, yeah, it was a real shame because it was outside Bristol. There was this fantastic barn, this huge barn, which was like a bookshop, and it was like 50p a book or something. And because there were so many books, they couldn't really put a price. So basically, if you found a book in like a pile, like it was all stacked on shelves, but you just had like in on like you know at the back of the barn, you just had like these piles of books, and if you could just find a book anywhere, because it was obviously brought in from a lot of libraries that closed down or people who donated them, people who passed away, just you could 50p, and there you go. They did change the pricing though later on, but I was able to get some really good quality military history books. I got one. Uh, what was one I got? There was one on Henry V, and I also got one. There was one book. It was like a detailed map of like demographics, history, and topography of Europe, like from and the world as well, from the Bronze Age to modern day. So modern day, the course was 1977 when it was published, but it was very good. So Iron Duke, hello there.
Uh, Hello, mate. How are you going?
I'm good.
Don't
How
know.
are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. I'm not quite sure why my avatar is not showing up, but there we go. Uh, Look at this. Is what you're talking about here is like I find really important because when I was a little kid in inner South London, like in the 1970s, every single public library had like loads of shelves of like at least a couple of shelves on British history, on military and naval history, on ancient history, every single library. And I was quite lucky because once I'd learned to read, I'd learned to read really quickly. Once I did, that was a bit late for me, and it was actually mainly my dad who helped me do that. But then I was able to go to my local public library, and as a junior member, because obviously there's a children's library and an adult library, because back in those days anyway, they didn't want children reading adult books. But if you were like serious on what you were interested in, you could go to the librarian and say, "Can I please, like as a 8, 9, 10-year-old, borrow some, say, books on ancient Rome from the adult library?" And like, if the librarian agreed, you could go and do that.
Yes.
It's like libraries were absolutely a vital resource for, especially in my opinion, for like working class kids to learn about history. You know, like I learned far more by borrowing books from my local library than I ever learned at school. Far more.
Oh, I mean, definitely. I one of when I was at school, we of course, and Andrew, you may have had this when you were in school all those years ago.
Yeah, I'm an
yeah,
old bugger, aren't I?
but we learned, of course, about the Norman invasion of England, right? Norman conquest of England, and William the Conqueror, and all that sort of stuff, and the Battle of Hastings. It was mainly centered around the Battle of Hastings. It wasn't so much before or after. It was all Battle of Hastings, right? And so that's what we learned. But because I had an interest in medieval stuff, I was big on the Crusades. When I was growing up, I loved books on the Crusades, especially the first and third Crusade. Third Crusade in particular. I mean, you had like Saladin and Richard the Lionheart, and we had Barbarossa, and all these people involved, and the Templar Knights, the Teutonic Knights, the Knights of Saint John.
Third Crusade is like such a great adventure story, apart from anything else. Like from the point of view of a young person.
Oh, it is. I mean, for me, when I was reading books on it, I always, because at the time growing up, it was like it was early 2000s, and so my point of reference for like these heroes was, I imagine, like Viggo Mortensen, you know, from Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings was a huge when the films came out, that it sort of captured my imagination in that sort of it was like through Lord of the Rings and medieval fantasy, I got into like the medieval stuff proper, and I was I mean, I really loved it. It was amazing.
Oh, 100%, mate. And don't forget that this was the time, although most of Richard the Lionheart's knights were Normans, not all of them. There were a couple of Saxons in there, but most of his knights were Normans. But the vast majority of his English army was Anglo-Saxons and Celts.
Yes. No, exactly. And you know, one thing that, you know, that is one thing I can't stand is now, when I went into the library, and it wasn't, and you just forget the history section, because I had a little look around all of it, even the fiction and stuff, and you know, every book, every book there, it was either, you know, girl boss, you know, looking to find herself, or you know, coming of age story. But when there was like the male, there was one book, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was this young man, and he was looking. I guess it was sort of targeted for young teenage boys and everything. But he was a complete cuck in the story. Like,
Yep.
you know, he was, you know, he all he did was share his emotions with his from the back. It was basically like coming to terms with emotions and mental health, and this was like categorized under like sort of teens and everything, and it was targeted for young men, and it was a complete like feminized crap. I mean, and it's really disheartening, because young boys coming through now, children, you know, coming through now, because you get forced to go to the library anyway with schools. They still do it today. They'll still, you know, force them to go to libraries and pick books and everything. But if they go now, they aren't going to, you won't have that person who will discover, like we did, these incredible, absolutely world-changing, earth-shattering, incredible stories of heroics, and
Yeah.
that's just gone. It's been taken. and it's criminal, and it really
And
made my blood
deliberate.
boil.
It's deliberate
It,
AI.
it really did. It made my blood boil. I ended up just walking up because I was absolutely disgusted with everyone in. It was absolute disgusting. It was cultural. I mean, in my mind, it is cultural terrorism. They might as well be ISIS fighters smashing a statue up, to be honest, because
I
that's
think I think Vingle in the chat makes the point. He said he went to his local library because they were getting rid of loads of their books, and he walked away with like 3 carrier bags full of books. And I guarantee you these will be good books that the library is getting rid of that have these, as you say, they have these stories of heroic people who we as Anglo-Celtic people, or white people even, can identify with.
yeah. And remember the story right back on with Roald Dahl. They actively went out of their way to try and change the terminology and phrasing in the book to remove its unique Englishness from it. When I say Englishness, the identity of the English people from it, to remove certain terms to conform with the modern, this modern and dystopian and globalist English person, the global citizen. I don't even call them English; they're global citizens. To appease to that crowd, and of course we know there was a huge pushback from it, and they said they wouldn't, but for future books they would still print it off and remove, offensive terms and everything to just that
So, in other
what
words,
they deemed offensive.
they're going to censor the books. In other words,
Yeah, they're going to change the meaning of the books to censor it, and I think Vingle is right, because effectively we if you find these books, you're going to have to take them and have, because if you have them on like ebooks or audiobooks, in theory it could be wiped, it could be taken
oh
from
yeah,
you, it
100%.
could be it could be taken.
You need a hard copy. I totally agree.
And yeah, and so,
Yeah.
and for me, what I've been doing is I was just mentioning before you came on, there was a bar. I've been sort of collecting books, works. I've got like the Illumination of Lord of the Rings. I've got all these sorts of things because I am concerned, ever since the Roald Dahl incident, that there will be an attempt in the future to change. I mean, it's one of the reasons I got Charles Oman. I've been sort of hoarding his hoarding his
Yep.
work
Yep.
because I'm
history of the British Army, etc. Yeah.
yeah, the British Army in particular, because the libtards and the global terrorists will target him. Will target. They target the British identity, but you know, but even and I'm not throwing shade at Americans here, but there are some American people who are friends of ours, and I do consider them friends. I'm not gonna name names or anything. I don't want to call them out on this, but some of them even play into the narrative that the British Empire was somehow toxic, evil, and woke and anti-civilizational.
Yeah,
That we get.
I'm actually going to do a stream on that AI as a reply, because I think I know the video you're talking about, and I think the dude is not totally wrong, but I think he exaggerates. But yeah, I like him, by the way. I do regard him as
Yeah,
a friend of ours.
I
But yeah, I'm going to do a
yeah.
video that as a reply to that at some point, which you would be most welcome to join, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, sure, and first of all, I mean, I would say, and I know there's someone in chat who's sort of saying, well, it was. I'm not going to engage on this conversation because we'll save that for another time. But I will say, looking into it, because I've been looking into the response, and every single time you look at the British Empire, from you could say, let's say, like the first format of the British Empire being that occupied, or what we in North America, so the 13 colonies, Canada, and everything, and then during the Napoleonic Wars and post-Napoleonic Wars, as we covered, the British Empire wasn't necessarily managerial. in both those things, because we relied on local rulers to carry on governance of the day. Yes, we had a bureaucratic force, but at the same time, I mean, Iron Duke, you probably know how many people, how many civil servants in London, in Whitehall, ran India? Wasn't it like
None,
eight?
none. Yeah, hardly any. Hardly any civil servants ran India. Full stop.
I remember there was like I saw it was like in a book or something. I think it was someone quoted like saying there were like 8 or something effectively that had
In England, yeah, I don't.
in
It would have
England.
been, yeah, it would have been
Yeah,
about that small. And I mean,
it,
even at
yes,
the end of the Second World War, when you can absolutely say that Britain was far more cucked than it had been in the 19th century, but even at the end of the Second World War, India, the Indian government, under a British viceroy, turned around and said to the British government, "You owe us money."
yes, and so the governance of India and the colonies was basically done through local the local government structure that already existed.
But
So
even if it didn't, AI, like for example, one of the greatest British battles in the Second World War was uh, in India, just inside the Indian border from Burma in 1944. And there was one British battalion there, the Royal West Kent Regiment, which was a very, very good regiment with a very good Lieutenant Colonel commanding it. Few Indian allies, but not many. But basically, the Royal West Kent Regiment was the core of the defence. They were attacked by an entire Japanese Imperial Army division. So, like, there were one battalion with maybe a battalion and a half of Indian guys helping them, assorted Indian and Gurkha guys, by the way. But they were attacked by an entire Imperial Japanese Army division, which was 9 battalions. So they were hugely outnumbered, and the Brits won in the end. Yeah,
yeah,
and the local local like civil service officer who was in charge of that place used to go around with a group of about half a dozen Naga spearmen who were his bodyguard. And he refused to leave because he totally identified with those local people.
yes.
Who the Japanese would have like done nasty things to had they won the place.
Oh yeah, and they did. I mean, I remember my grandfather telling me the story of how he witnessed in Burma, some Burmese who were who would help the British, who were beheaded. A couple of men were beheaded by Japanese forces, and he found their decapitated remains on the side of a road. So or path, I should say, not road, path more like, and he knew those fellas. So yeah, absolutely. Also, hello, military theorist in the chat. Hello, good day.
And he's reading about Kohima, which is the battle I'm talking about. So yeah, where the Brits and the Japanese ended up fighting each other across the district commissioner's tennis court. That's how close their trenches were.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah, I think I've actually got a book of it. It was an Osprey book, which was more on the. I used to have these great. I say books. They were more like short books. But what they would do is they would either talk about like the details of the battle plans, like how like on the sort of like smaller detail of battle movements, or even just on uniform. The equipment the soldiers would have, what divisions were involved, what units were involved in which. So it was quite detailed, these books, and I've got hundreds of them. My favorite one.
I know the Osprey books.
Yes.
They're quite good if you want to know those sort of details that you're talking about. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I had one on the this was one when I was at school. I was at boarding school. I got reported on. It was one on the SS Charlemagne division.
You evil bugger. But yeah,
I know. Because the school was worried that I was reading too much on
but
the SS.
Patricius von Kempen is saying that it sounded a bit. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it sounds spready managerial. To be honest, no, it wasn't. Not in the way you think. It wasn't.
Well, no,
Like
no,
that
because
guy. That guy stayed for the defense and would have got killed along with those people. Are you telling me that any of these managerial people that we have today would actually stay and get killed with the people they're managing? Because
the
no,
thing
they
is
no chance at all.
with the managerials, and I think this was we've heard this term before, foxes and lions. Now the
Yeah,
managerial types of foxes, they are
yeah,
they're basically like worm tongue. They are worm tongue. When
100.
when the shit hits the fan, they're out of there. I mean, the classic example is if anyone sees that film,
Modern Afghanistan, if you want to look at it, guys. I
well, I
mean,
was going to say
or
yes. I was going to
or Vietnam in the 1970s, similar.
yes. Yeah, fall of Saigon. I mean, Afghanistan is actually a perfect example because when the British was there during our empire days, first of all, with Afghanistan, before we were, of course, kicked out, but what we did was like we've done with everywhere else, we looked at the local politics of the region. We said, okay, this is the regional warlords or kings or emirs as they were called. And what we'll do is, this guy will make as like the king of Afghanistan. We'll have all the aristocracy behind him, and then we'll rule above that. So we'll have the aristocracy, and it'll be an Islamic country. It's Islamic, so they'll make an Islamic country, and we'll just rule it like that. And basically, you just rule it like it was before, but it was under the British, British control, effectively, right?
Absolutely, I agree totally. But the point I'm trying to make is that the district commissioner of Kohima, who went around, like I said, with a half a dozen guys bodyguarding him from the local Nagar people with spears, not rifles, spears. He was told to leave by the British government and refused. And he stayed there during the siege when the Brits were outnumbered, I don't know, 10, 15 to 1. And he would have died with those people. Now, none of these managerial types that Patricius von Kempen, none of those guys would do that. They would be on the first plane out.
I mean, would you say Gordon of Khartoum? I mean, he was definitely a lion. He stayed.
Yeah.
He died.
Was he managerial? No, not at all.
No, of course not. No, or Napier. Many times he went against the government. He was just like, what was his famous thing? Of course, was no, you won't burn your bride. You won't burn the brides. That's not allowed. So yeah. I mean, there were several times. Oh, that was the other thing. He was told, stop claiming territory or stop making agreements with them because we can't administer. We can't send off. We can't govern it like this.
Was it Napier? Was it Napier AI who turned around and sent a telegram to the British government after they told him not to do something, and he sent them the telegram saying, "I have sinned." Because he'd just taken over Sind in India.
That was him. And what was it? I think the only reason he went up the Khyber Pass was because he was avid. He loved the story of Alexander and he wanted to retrace the steps. So like the Khyber Pass stuff was actually more personal. It was like he just used the army as like a personal sort of venture. I mean, all these people, and who was the officer, the general that was killed at the battle of against the Zulus? Was it Iswalda?
Isan Lawana.
Islan Lawana, yeah. Who was the general that was killed?
There was no general killed there. There was a colonel, Paul A.
Oh, colonel. Sorry, yeah, colonel. The highest rank. Yeah, same thing. I mean, these people.
He was so managerial, he was still there, firing his pistol and getting assegaied. That's managerial. Or really, is that a lion rather than a fox? I reckon that's a lion myself. But
well, I mean, this is my point. And then, of course, like if you look at Afghanistan, in under the control of like NATO, and the modern empire that governs the West. If you look at what went on there, like in Iraq, what do? They, instead of adhering to the local political realities ground, no, we'll just sweep the old elites away. We'll bring all in these new Western managerial types, and they will become new elites, and we'll create this democratic republic, and we're going to hire all these corrupt pedophiles to fill military and police positions in Afghan country. And they'll all get doped high up on drugs, and we'll waste money training them, only for when we do decide to withdraw, the real elites of the country which is Taliban, would descend back. And the thing was, there wasn't
we even brought in British feminist teachers to sit there in classrooms in Afghanistan and try and teach Afghan women about modern Western feminism, which is one of the most poisonous things there are in the modern world. Yeah. That's what Britain did. That, not America, Britain.
Well, I number one, where does this ideology come from? I mean, I'm under no illusion that Britain is not an autonomous state. No. Most European countries aren't.
We were a semi-state of America in Britain these days.
Yes, fundamentally we are.
And don't get me wrong, there are many, many, many good American blokes. Many. There are many American blokes who I really like. Don the Pleb's a great guy. But there are many. Red Hawk is another excellent American bloke. There are many American blokes who I really like and I regard as friends. But you know what? The American government is not my friend at all. No. And it's not even the friend of most American people either.
And on the topic, Iron Duke, of American vassals and bitches to the American regime, let's talk about Germany, as that's the next topic of discussion.
Crikey. Yeah, indeed. Don't they want to make the AFD illegal or something?
Yeah, so I'm just going to... There was a first report in the Telegraph, but I think you have to pay to... Oh no, actually you don't. Sorry, that's the Times I'm thinking of. All right, so let's connect to the Telegraph. So I'll just answer this question. A.R. Shire, do you know Lord Miles? He was a young British who's now imprisoned in Afghanistan. Yeah, I do know him. I spoke to Callum, I think, about him once, and who knows him better than I do. And I've had a back and throw with, I think, Lord Miles a couple times when he went into Africa. I mean, this is the thing. I understand he was obviously, I don't want to say laughing, but he was obviously trying to recreate that sort of heroic British, Victorian adventure explorer, spirit, like the people we talked about.
Mm-hmm. I can't hear anything at the moment from you, AI. I'm sure he'll be back very shortly. I'm going to take over his show. No, I'm not. Yeah, I do know. I know of Lord Miles, and I know he did some stuff with Callum. I'm not in favour of any British person being held in Afghanistan, but I don't know what he did. I don't know what happened. Speaking as someone who tried to some degree, do some 19th century stuff in my own small way, like moving to South Africa in the mid-80s and this kind of stuff. It's really difficult these days, guys. Don't think it's easy, because it isn't. I ended up fighting in a war where we won all the battles and lost the war. This is what happens these days, sadly. I'm sure AI will be back very soon. I don't want military theorists. I don't want him to be dead. I don't know much about him. Whether he was cool or not, I don't know. I know he did some stuff with Callum from the Lotus Eaters, which I still find a strange name for that channel. But anyway, yeah. But we so poisoned the well in Afghanistan by the time he was there that I don't know. AI, you're back. I'm pleased to see.
I am back. I'm having to use my phone, but the internet. I mean, the internet in my house is absolutely bloody dismal. I mean, I don't know. I have a theory that the local village is conspiring against me.
I'm sure it's not, but yeah, I'm glad you're back, mate. We were just talking about this Miles person, and I know he did some stuff with Callum when he went to Afghanistan, and
Yeah.
like I said, I hope he's all right, because I don't want any British guy to come to a bad end. But like, hadn't we totally poisoned the well in Afghanistan by that time? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, before I was I lost connection. I was just going to say that you know, I understand why he did it, the will to do it, and everything, and it was kind of like a revolt against the managerial modern world modernity, and everything, that to actually have like real sense of adventure and everything. The trouble is, the reality is, if you were to do that, you kind of need to have like a small army at your back. If you were to go,
Yeah,
because
you do absolutely need people to support you, so that not any random group of 4 Taliban can arrest you. Yeah, for sure.
Well, the problem is he went quite deep into the Hindu Kush, to a region where even the Taliban have limited control. It's like proper warlord territory.
Yeah.
And the thing there is that area has been that area has been. I mean, even Alexander the Great struggled to conquer the hill tribes of the Hindu Kush. So
Yes.
it's been the perennial. He had in his the successor state there was the Bactrian kingdom, and that was I think they fell quite quickly, actually.
It was Greek. It was Greek for a while, and we have some nice coins from them. But yeah, it didn't last that long. Absolutely.
No. So it didn't last that long, and
A military theorist says, "I think that spirit needs to be used in our own nations rather than exploring elsewhere." I partly agree with that. But on the other hand, the traditional British spirit, like going back into the 19th and 18th century, is, and even before that, is very much exploratory. I do see what you're saying, military first, but I have issues at how you use that spirit in our own country. AI, look, you'll probably have much better views on this than me, so you go for
it. Yeah, I mean that sort of adventurous spirit. What's incredible is that it exists within the English people, the Anglo-Saxon Germanic people, but also within the Celtic people of this island. In particularly the Scots. I mean, the Scots were a very adventurous people, and they were clearly mercantile. It's one of the reasons why, again, going back to the British Empire quickly, I do want to move on, talk about Germany and others, but this might make this as a final point on my part, is that certain groups that exist in, that are accused of being, deeply involved in mercantile business, never had that much sway. Didn't really have that. It had that little to no sway in the British Empire, because the Scots were effectively that people. They were the mercantile. They were the nefarious. In some ways, they were quite nefarious out in Hong Kong and Singapore and Calcutta. That they were that sort of group, and as we know, the Scots did over-index in I think it was in India, and the military officers and everything. So there was, that spirit was there. It needs to be used on our own nations. I think any reawakening of the spirit needs to come back. The problem is the British, the public at the moment are content with material, just material things, just things, and that, and the thing is, we live in a society where there is no risk. There's no risk to life. There's no risk to anything. The closest thing we have to that,
unless you're an old person or a child in an area which is too, in inverted commas and air quotes, diverse, then there is. But
yeah. Well, I mean, I saw a segment from the Lotus Eaters today where, you have like these TikTok groups, these immigrant TikTokers who
run by the Chinese Communist Party, by the way, TikTok. But okay.
Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, these immigrant groups like based out of Calais and stuff, and I think they're like, if you trace back, it's like Libyan, Moroccan, West African, that sort of stuff, and they follow drunk British girls about, when they're like, when they're all like lying on the road, flat out drunk, vomiting everywhere. That it's just really, really drunk, and basically
because they can't find a good man to protect them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and basically they're saying, look, and in the sort of like the Berber or language or whatever it is, they're basically saying, come to Britain, look at all these slags. We can.
They regard them all as whores. They regard all those British girls as whores. That's all they regard them
as. And the problem is, I think one of the problems that the right has tackling this particular subject, because this is not a new subject, this has been talked about before, is on one hand, yes, you can look at the obvious perpetrators and you target that, and you focus your energy on that. But there's also the other side to it, which not many people were willing to talk about, is as a society we can't allow this sorts of level of degeneracy among our own to continue. It's just you. I'm not saying
but AI. My first question would be, why don't white British guys protect those girls?
Why white British men don't protect themselves?
Yeah, no, those girls. Why don't they protect those girls? Why don't they say, nah, leave them alone? Like, I get that those girls themselves are degenerate. I get that. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So I joined the right from the manosphere to some degree. So I do totally get that. But why don't white British blokes say, no, you can't do
that? Because a lot of British blokes today, especially younger ones, people of my age and younger, don't see race, and they're worried that if they were to step in, I know they don't see race, and if they step in, they see race. And also, I guess the amount of laws, the amount of propaganda in film and articles in TV shows that they consume, it's internalized that if you even stand up to or have a go at someone who's like black or brown, it is kind of like a reactive sort of thing of where you're hesitant because of the amount of propaganda. And as we go on to Germany,
well, if we can't break that, we're lost. If we can't break that, we as British Anglo-Celtic people are lost. We have to be able to, because it's just anti-white propaganda. That's all it is. Let's be honest. Call someone a racist. They're not talking about racism, which every single race and color of people in the world has. All they're talking about is being anti-white.
Yeah, and the trouble is, if you were to engage in that subject, of course, the ultimate ace card of all these fuckers is Hitler, which, and then we're going to go on to talk about Germany, but I mean, it's obviously Hitler.
I don't
Nazis,
know.
Nazis
AI, last time I looked, Britain played an extremely large part in defeating Hitler and lost many, many, many thousands of fighting men defeating Hitler. What has Hitler got to do with Britain?
Well, in the new canon, basically the Nazi Party was never extinguished, and that for many of these people, the Conservative Party is a Nazi party. Keir Starmer is a Nazi. Farage is an ultimate Nazi. I mean, I remember back in the day where Nick Griffin is a Nazi, and probably the Liberal Party in Australia.
Is anyone Stalin, by the way, or Chairman Mao?
No,
no one. And they both killed far more people than Hitler did. But I mean, whatever.
Well, exactly. But the problem is, in the victors, and the spoils and all that. So,
well, Britain wasn't the victor of World War II, obviously. That was America and Russia, America and the Soviet Union. But Britain certainly wasn't a victor of World War II. And I think to a lot, again, this is going to come up on the stream I do, replying to our friend who thinks the British Empire was the start of the game. No, it wasn't. This happened after 1945, really.
Yes.
I would, to some degree, say what he is doing is like American cope, which he accuses the Brits of doing. I think he's actually doing American cope. This was not how Britain ran things prior to 1939 at all.
I think I am interested in why a lot of Americans on the right think this. And I think what is
because it gives them an excuse. AI.
I think if I was to give them any sort of leeway, and I you know me, Iron Duke, I don't give that lightly, and I wouldn't want to give that. But I think the reason why a lot of Americans on the right are easily susceptible to that idea that the British Empire was liberal and gay and this began all the problems of the woes of wokeism and all that sort of stuff, is because a lot of Americans, they're brought up in their, whichever states they're brought up in, southern states, northern states, Midwest, whatever, and they're English-speaking people, and when they hear about the England or Britain or the other English-speaking bits, they automatically internalize, oh, these people are English speaking, just like us in our community. And so that means that they can't separate, or they can't conceive of the difference of Britain and the United States. And so and maybe because of element of American imperialism, they see us as one of the same. I mean, that's why Britain's always been referred to as like the 51st state or something like that.
No, you see, I think it's much more simple than that. I think that America has always had, since 1776, for obvious reasons, a fairly big anti-British sentiment. And I think all this is that brought up today. And like I said, I like the dude who made that stream. I think he's a really good and intelligent bloke, but I think he's very heavily influenced from the fact that basic Americanism is anti-British, which is one reason why the whole special relationship has always been bullshit, basically. It's never been true. The only people who ever thought it was true was a very few Anglo-Americans like Winston Churchill, for example, who had a very rich American mother who came from an American millionaire's family. And maybe one or two Americans at some stage in the late 19th century, but hardly any, actually. I really think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of Anglo-American relations, which have basically always been bad since 1776 to 1783 and the end of the American War of Independence. They've always really been quite bad. When we have cooperated, it has been reluctantly, for the most part. And the people who don't realize that, I think, are not looking at what was really going on there. And I really do think this idea of trying to put the gay American empire, as AA calls it, which is not what I would call it. I think it's much more. It's a much more world government. World Economic Forum, people who don't belong to anywhere. I mean, like Rishi Sunak's not British in any way, shape, or form. Nor is, and you know, you got Joe Biden in America, who's obviously completely senile. But and I'm not slagging off ordinary American people. I have good American friends. There are many, many good Americans. I would just emphasize this 1,000 times. We're talking about governments here, not peoples. And the American government has never had any room whatsoever for the British government. Never. And the idea that somehow British power migrated to America post 1945 is just bullshit. I'm sorry. It just is.
No.
And like I said, the guy who comes out with this theory, I think he's a very good bloke. I like him very much. I'd happily have him on my channel anytime. I just don't think he's right about that.
No, I think that's fair enough. And I'm going to move on to the German bit now because it's been an hour. And yes, I think, unfortunately, because I'm on my phone, I can't share the screen. I was going to share the screen to an article, but I'm afraid I can't do that, so I will just go through it. So Iron Duke, we'll make a start. I've got a Spiked article because that's the only one that's free that I can find on here.
Wow, a Spiked article.
Yes, it's just like 2015. Yes. Open, honest debates, guys.
Can I just say to you before we move on, AI, Military Theorist has just made a good post in the chat. The US still had extensive invasion and occupational plans for Canada. He says into the 20th century, actually, or into the 1930s is the truth.
Yes, yeah.
And that should tell you all about real Anglo-American relations. Absolutely, 100%. But bear in mind, we're talking about governments and not the people.
Well, I mean, you see, now with AA, if you look at Evola or Francis Parkayoki or people like that, they actually go into the concept of American spirit. So, but anyway, that's a debate for another day on that account. So, but yeah. Anywho, Germany. So I got a Spiked article here. So I don't like reading a Spiked article, but I'll read it anyway. So the German president Frank Walter Steinmeier, I don't know, Steinmeier, made an extraordinary intervention last week. Speaking at the 75th anniversary of the Heirenmenschei's Convention. I'm butchering all the German words, by the way, so just go with it, everyone.
which led to the first draft of the modern German constitution, he delivered a stark warning that the enemies of democracy could soon be in a position to erode Germans' freedoms and to brutalize society. At the same time, he offered a solution to these dangers. Germans, he said, have it in our hands to put those who despise democracy back in their place. The German president is expected to act above party politics, and so he was careful not to name these enemies outright, but I guess we all know who he's referring to. Nevertheless, it was abundantly clear that Streimer had the right-wing populist AFD Alternative for Deutschland in his sights. And the tools he alluded to as set out in the German constitution included banning the party outright. This is precisely how his comments have been interpreted and written up in the German and global media. As shocking as this may sound, Streimer would not be alone supporting a ban on the AFD. An editorial in the German news magazine Der Spiegel, which is a left-wing rag, last week called for the enemies of the constitution to be banned, claiming that it's time to defend democracy with sharper weapons. The German Institute for Human Rights, a major state-funded think tank, who is also again an anti-German leftist rag, claimed last month that the AFD is sufficiently hostile to the German constitution to be legally disbanded. Nancy Faeser, Interior Minister in the ruling Social Democrat government, is also known to support the ban. These calls have only been getting louder as the AFD has grown in support over the past year. Although the AFD lost ground in 2021 federal elections, the populists are now polling ahead of the governing SPD. And while the AFD is polling second nationally behind the centre-right CDU, it is currently topping polls in 4 out of Germany's 5 eastern states, 3 of which are holding elections next year. On a side note, they apparently won an unexpected mayoral election in I think it was Thuringia, so and in Saxony, which was apparently quite unexpected. So yeah, and he referenced this in the article where that the elites are extremely anxious about the populist takeover of Germany. It's as if the German elites cannot hear themselves. They are essentially arguing that the only way to save German democracy is to tear it down. Okay, yeah. So then sort of spike go into like how we must defend democracy and all that sort of crap.
Has democracy done you any good, AI, over your lifetime? Like, has anything you voted for actually happened?
No, actually, surprisingly, the opposite has happened every time.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I'm a lot older than you. Like I started voting. Let me think. I was born in '65, so I started voting in '83. Yeah, strange. I'm exactly the same as you, AI. Every single thing I voted for, the reverse has happened, basically. So yeah, but people telling me about our democracy tends to leave me absolutely stone cold, and I don't give a shit, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, everything I voted for. I mean, my voting pattern has been. I mean, it's not been. Well, it's been okay. It's not been. The first party I voted for was UKIP in 2014. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I voted for UKIP. I absolutely voted for Brexit. Everything I voted for, the reverse has happened. So I don't give a shit about anyone who talks about our democracy because we don't live in a democracy. Well, look, democracy is a con, basically. It's a con. You get everyone to vote, and then you have a unipie. The American unipie is the Democrats and the mainstream Republicans. The British unipie is absolutely the Labour Party and the so-called, in inverted commas, conservatives, and the Australian uni party is the Liberals and Labor. They're a uni party. It makes no damn difference who you vote for if you vote for any of those major parties. It really doesn't.
Yes. Thank you, Tricky Woo. Thank you. You're joining the stream. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Because I'm just reading the article, right? And one thing I find amazing is that Spike are able to articulate in the first couple of paragraphs, basically, and the Uniparty, as you just referenced it, you know, the establishment, have used Smithian principles to punish enemies. And basically, full on mask off, democracy doesn't matter. We determine what's democracy, and these people are enemies of the state. Ban them, arrest them, beat them up on the street, which has happened to one in Bavaria recently.
Look. Let's look at the Brexit vote. All right, Britain voted to leave the EU. Have we really left the EU, or have every single politician, whether they be Labour or Conservative, I mean, or Indian bankers like Rishi Sunak, who has he's got no connection to Britain whatsoever, really. So why is he Prime Minister? Because he was parachuted in, even over and above Conservative Party voters. It's just nonsense. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it's an obvious lie.
Well, yes, absolutely, and it's if you look at the like the Brexit vote, the problem is it shatters and it confronts the ultimate conservative, people on the right and conservatives and people on the right in this country, and I think this really shattered the myth for them that there is no such thing as neutral institutions. There's no such thing as the neutral state. That just the idea that you can be elected and then suddenly you're in power, you're governing, is not true. Because the problem is, if you have an organized judiciary, a legal system, judiciary, civil service, and local government all working against you, all actively in favor of the enemy position, then you're not running anything. You might as well be the last emperor of China. You're just a puppet. So,
yep, that's British voters in Britain today. Absolutely, 100%. But then we'll get people say vote Starmer at the next election, which to me is insane. It's the other side of the uni pie. No,
put woke away.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Away, It's not going to happen. The only thing any of us on the right can do, and I don't think this is going to work for a minute, but we should at least try, is all of us, every single one of us, who's a real person on the right and British, should vote at the next general election for almost any of the smaller right of centre populist parties. And it doesn't even really matter which one that has the most chance of winning in your area. Don't spread your votes about all of them. And again, all of those smaller right of centre populist parties, if they had the slightest sense, and if they were real, would make some sort of electoral alliance not to run against each other, because they're all stealing each other's votes.
Yes, pretty much. The trucker convoy, as military theorists said, the trucker convoy on January 6th, similar thing. And and he said ultimately what we need is rogue people in the elites who, I guess, see what we see, think what we think, and we need some of their backing. I mean, that's how things changes. And I think with Germany now, the reason why because why okay, the AFD are polling at 21%, right, and that makes them pretty much on poll for either first place or second place. I think they're in second place looking, but they could, like, if they get another 3 percentage points, which is possible, because they in the span of a couple of months they jumped 10%, which is quite extraordinary. But if they were to get, say, another like 3 points, then they'll be first. Now,
do you think AI that might have anything to do with the fact that Germany has lost all its cheap gas from Russia, and all of its coal-fired power stations are being closed down, and Germany has a very limited civil nuclear industry, and that there are places in Germany where you can go in the winter, certainly next year, where you're going to be cold in your room. Do you think it might have maybe something to do with that?
yes. Military theorist also reminds me, because I think I covered it. There was and this is not the only coup. There was another coup planned before by a similar right-wing group in the military in Germany, and
I'd love to see a Kaiser come back to Germany myself. I think that would be a good deal.
If you actually on one of the coup attempts, basically the elements of the military would gather weapons from their base, go out, and the first thing they were doing was round up American NGOs and German journalists and take them into like the Harz Mountains, and you can probably guess what they would do.
I'm
next.
sure they would just. I would only support putting them on airplanes and sending them home to America. That's the only thing I would support.
Well, that wasn't the plan of the the Germans military.
I'm sure it was AI. I'm sure it was.
I'm sure it was. But I mean,
yeah.
but in that scenario, they had jets prepared. I mean, they had judges. There was all, and then in the royalist in the royal coup one attempt last year, it was a similar thing. Military, police. You had judges, people all involved in this. And I think one of the problems with the AFD that the German elites have found, and I think this is where you have the Prussian and East German spirit breaking through, is unlike boomer conservatives in the West, in the English-speaking ones, German right are not a bunch of dipshits who will pull like a January 6th or sign some fucking letter writing campaign or some meaningless shit, and they actually get involved in like boring local politics, like becoming like the village clerk or the town supervisor.
Look, what makes me think about this is that, like, the Kaiser was a not the brightest tool in the German shed, shall we say, but his dad was a really good bloke. Now, if Germany could get a Kaiser like Kaiser Bill's father in charge, Germany might become a really, really good country.
Yeah, but the thing though is, Andrew, is that the one thing, and the reason they're doing the banning is because the problem is because the AFD are not just like any populist party like the ones in Italy or France that can fold overnight. The AFD have local, but they basically have the local administrative control over the regions they win, right? Like the left do. Total spectrum dominance, whatever you like to call it. The AFD have that, and I think that freaks out the establishment, because they're actually doing what Viktor Orban did in Hungary. You
mean the actual nationalist?
I think that is what they are freaking out about, and this comes back to what you probably remember. Me and Grimswalker did a stream on East Germany, and basically we compared West Germany to East Germany, and ultimately, my view is that East Germany was effectively more true to German spirit than West Germany. West Germany, if you actually dig a bit deeper under the surface, was entirely created, and its early formation and indoctrination was to teach the kids of West Germany to hate their own people, culture, and civilization, 100%. And to infect it with toxic liberal ideas, compared to compared to East Germany. And Honecker, you know, and he was the one that reintroduced Frederick the Great statues back to East Germany. He was the one that encouraged the East German military to adopt absolute Prussian military tradition.
Well, even today, AI, East Germany is more right wing than West Germany.
Well, I believe because East Germany didn't experience the CIA and American denazification programs, programs, the East Germans are immune to, like a lot of Eastern European types they're immune to this bullshit. You know, they're immune to they can see through it.
Even the best pop bands in Germany, the East German heavy metal guys are the best guys. Speaking as a traditional white wing chap, they're really good. Glad to see Nathan CJ Hood in the chat, by the way. Excellent chap.
Yeah, excellent channel. Yes, and he's got an excellent channel. If you do subscribe and watch content, if you're into Lord of the Rings, Norse and Anglo-Saxon mythology, or any sort of Northern Germanic mythology, Nathan Hood
also British history and so on. Nathan's really good on all that stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, no, I totally agree. That East Germany ended up being more truthfully Germany than West Germany did. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, and that's what's it's and I think the West Germans, because the thing there is, East Germany, the eastern provinces are pretty much in the bag for the AFD, but one thing that the AFD are now doing is they're basically, they're getting involved in Bavaria, they're getting involved in the Rhineland, in Hanover. They're sort of now going into the west part, and in those places they are doing quite well in the polls. In Bavaria, where it was said, I found an article saying a couple of years ago that they would struggle to find a foothold at all, like get maybe even win like one seat in the local, and in Bavaria they're doing quite well. They have elected officials there now, and so
that's the southern Catholic part of Germany.
Yes, they do very well in rural Germany, and I think the fear, ultimately, that the current regime in the AFD are basically pulling. They are managerial in nature. I'm not going to say that they're they are the ideal. But what they're doing is they're using enemy tactics or enemy behavior and thought against their governing regime in Germany, and that's what's freaking them. Because the thing there is, and I need to look into the background a lot of the East Germans, but there are quite a few of them are older people, especially the local elected stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if there is if a lot of them maybe worked in the old East German government. Because there seems to be a lot of
AI. Could I just say one thing? I would just say, like, were I a German, and obviously I'm not, but were I a German, just like being an English and British man, or being a Frenchman, you can look at your nation, and you can think we used to once be a really great nation, and we are all, whether it be Germany, Britain, or France, we're all being destroyed by our current governors. We're all being destroyed by our current governors, and this is the real truth.
Germany's. I saw a map of the youth population of Germany by region, by state and everything, and I mean, it's horrific. It's total. It's total. What we're told is white supremacist conspiracy theories, but it is total demographic.
So mass forward
change.
immigration is a lie, eh? It's a lie, yeah. There's not mass forward immigration into
Well, I
Germany
mean, they say
and
that.
Britain and France. There's not. We're not trying to tell our small children to become gay and giving them sex education at like 7, 8, 9. None of that is true. It's just a lie, and it's all a white conspiracy theory. Well, if you believe that, then
Yeah.
you have to be much more stupid than myself or AI.
I mean, what I find amazing about the East Germans, and this again, this is a product of not being exposed to denazification, especially the boomer generation of the East Germans, because they are, I mean, they're like they're basically like, imagine like Gandalf the White. Gandalf the White
Can I
is
can I
equivalent.
just suggest one? AI, can I suggest one good German channel that people should watch on YouTube? Go and check out Red Pill Germany. Red Pill Germany is a good German nationalist, but he's not any way, shape, or form extreme. But he's a good German nationalist, and I would absolutely recommend his channel to everybody. Red Pill Germany is a good channel.
Yeah. So what I was saying was the East German boomers, the ones that are like the AFD vanguard. I mean, those people. If you remember a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago now, they would be protesting in Dresden every weekend against mass immigration and sexual assaults and all that sort of stuff. And it'd be huge crowds. This is the thing, there'd be huge crowds and they'll be protesting. And one thing I find about the boomer East Germans is that they are, what makes them unique compared to the others in the West is that they understand, like many Eastern Europeans and everything, in-group preference. That they have internalized in-group preference. They have no shame. They have no shame. They have no concept of shame about themselves, their family, or their culture. And
Good.
if that was to be leveled,
no one should have in the West. No one should have shame about their culture.
No, they
We've
shouldn't.
never done anything wrong.
And when you have Western, the Western leaders, when they try to interview them and try and put that shame on them, it's basically either the East German types, the AFD types, they either laugh it off or they openly say, "I don't care what you think," and that is like that is, I think that is why the developments in Germany could be interesting going forward. I know Rory Stewart. I think he might have said earlier, like a German exit, like Brexit or whatever. I mean, the thing though is, the AFD. I think they stated that they support the European. They still support being in the European Union in principle, but I know a lot of their members do favour the dissolution of the European Union. So
100%. Best
I'm
thing
not
that
too
could
sure.
possibly happen to Europe. I would like to address Rory Herbert in the chat. He was saying the West Germans in places like Hanover hate the British Army when I was serving there during the Cold War. Look, I didn't serve in the British Army of the Rhine. In fact, one of the reasons I left the British Army is because I didn't want to serve in the British Army of the Rhine, because everyone who I knew in the British Army told me that was the worst place to serve in the British Army. But anyway, maybe they did, and if they did, I can kind of understand that. Although I equally know people who did serve in BAOR who had no problems with Germans whatsoever. So I don't know, Rory, but maybe you're right. I don't know. But if they did hate us, I kind of understand why they did.
I do owe Rory Herbert an apology. I referred to him as Rory Stewart, and Nathan had rightfully pointed it out in chat. Yes, Rory Stewart is the guy who does a podcast with Alistair Campbell. Rory Stewart is also the guy who was a regional administrator for Basra and was so completely blind he allowed half the Iranian military to wander across the border and fund and support Shire paramilitary groups. Yes, that is Rory Stewart, not our friend Rory Herbert. Well, I assume
Yeah,
Rory Herbert isn't Rory Stewart.
I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's not.
That would be a
He's,
shocking revelation if he was.
yeah, I'm
That
sure he's
was
not.
Rory Stewart. that would be quite funny, actually. But
I was lucky when I served in the British Army because, like, I did 2 tours in Northern Ireland because I was lucky enough, in inverted commas, to get sent on a enrolment tour after a regular tour. But the enrolment tour was, the married dudes can't take their wives and all this kind of stuff. If I'd have stayed in the British Army, I would have ended up going to British Army of the Rhine, which I didn't want to do because everyone I spoke to in the British Army said, that's the worst bit of the British Army, don't go there.
My dad was in West Germany, and I mean, he was telling me that a lot of the military personnel wouldn't wear outside of base their military gear because at the time when he was there, you had the Red Army faction, which was the they would target Americans, Brits, French, particularly the French actually, but that was
when I was in the British Army, you were told not to wear military kit when you were traveling because of the provisional IRA. And of course, these days, the provisional IRA and Sinn Féin, which is their political wing, actually totally support Brits out, Somalians in the Republic of Ireland. Sinn Féin is totally in favour of LGBTQ, turning your son into a daughter, supposedly, and as many third world migrants into Ireland as they can possibly get, so that actually the Irish people will be very quickly replaced because there's only just over 5 million Irish people. They're even in a worse situation than Britain from that point of view. But yeah, look, I didn't serve in BAOR because I was told it was the worst place to serve in the British Army. And so instead I moved to South Africa, joined the SADF, which was at least interesting. I don't know, guys. But Britain won World War II, but in no real way. Britain was the winner of World War II that didn't win in any real way whatsoever, which probably had nothing whatsoever to do with our half-American Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. But I'm taking the piss a bit. You also, I thought, wanted to talk about cashless societies, which I think is a really important subject.
Yes, so cashless societies. This is something I've been observing in the background. Do you want to start this one off? Because I think you might know probably a bit more than I do on this particular subject. What's been going on? I've just been picking up this on the last few days because I've been seeing more and more conversations around this, and especially it's like I've seen like these not digital ID, but like you can scan your hand and make payments via like microchips and some like futuristic
all vile. And no one on the right should support this stuff. What cash gives you is privacy. This is the main thing to understand about the cashless society. What cash gives you as an ordinary citizen of any country is it gives you privacy. Like your £5 note or $10 note, or whatever it might be. No one knows where that comes from. So you give that to someone for a product, they give you the product, you go home. Or it might be for a bill or whatever. All of that is good from us on the right traditional side. As soon as you have a cashless society, every single transaction you make, whether it be a $1 tip to a barrister in a freezing cold Melbourne coffee bar, with the wind whistling through and like freezing the arse off the feminists and soy boys who are sitting in there, or whether it be you buying a car for, say, £2,000, all of that becomes known to the state, traceable by the state. And as soon as you do anything bad, if you have a cashless society, as soon as you do anything bad, the state can say to that bank, no, don't like this person. They got wrong think, 1984 wrong think, which is what we're heading towards. They shouldn't be able to use their bank account. All of a sudden, you've got no money and you're going to starve. This is why anything to do with a cashless society, every single human being on the right, and most of us will be men, but there will be a few women who will follow their men for the most part. Every single one of us needs to be totally against this. It is the end of privacy. It is the end of any control over your own way of doing things. I mean, let's say you're a little kid of, 14, 15, and you want to run a paper around, and someone in your local news agency or milk bar or whatever says, all right, I'll give you 20 quid as long as you go and deliver all these newspapers. Cashless society, that can't happen. Or if it does happen, the government can stop it as soon as they want. Same thing if you're a right-wing person and you want someone to go around and deliver leaflets for cash. Yeah. As soon as the government finds out, these are right-wing leaflets, you got wrong thing, they'll stop that and they'll probably come and arrest you. The whole cashless society thing is absolutely, totally against every single thing on the right that we believe in. And you absolutely have to be against it. And I would even say, if it makes life slightly harder, and I do this all the time, even if it makes life slightly harder, use your credit card less, use cash more.
Yes.
That's all I really had to say. Apart from the fact that, like, you've got the Australian government already coming in and saying, there should be no cash transactions over $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it might be. And there's only one reason for that, and that is control of you. It's coming right back to when the height of the China virus was going on and you were locked in your home. It's coming right back to that, and that's what they want. They want all of us to be 21st century peasants living in a pod, eating the bugs, but owning nothing and somehow being happy. Really, this cashless society thing is totally anti-right-wing. Sorry, mate.
And
that's all I got to say.
And it's what's interesting is that in this country we have seen cashless convenience stores or smaller supermarkets. I remember seeing that clip of what was it, Piers Corbyn going round where he is wanting to buy some fruit or something, and he refuses to he's got cash, and he says quite rightfully that this is legal tender, and puts it down and walks out. And and the funny thing is, technically in law, he can't be done for theft because he does pay for the item because it is legal tender and all that.
Yeah.
But military theorist says we saw, I still believe that COVID and the lockdowns that went with it, though it was like a hamster being experimented on. We were obviously all the hamsters because we not only was it, I mean, the ultimate thing to shut down populism, but also you saw how communication, media, the state can actually quickly control the population, a population, how they can get them to believe one thing to a new thing. I mean, remember with lockdowns and everything and herd immunity, then actually locking down and saving us, maybe how the dialectic changed so quickly, and how people went from being on one position to the other in a matter of days.
100%.
But we also saw in that rollout, because of COVID and social distancing, contactless payments became normal, and you actually saw in
again totally you couldn't and never could catch COVID from coins. You just or notes. You couldn't. Impossible.
I mean, exactly.
I mean, just in the same way that a mask never stopped you catching COVID. It never did. It was a lie. It was just a lie.
Well, yeah. I mean, standing. What was it? Standing. What was the social distancing like? 2
and
feet
look, AI. It was a bad flu. At worst, it was a bad flu. That's the worst it ever was, and it was a total lie. And now we have more people dying month after month after month from unexplained, in inverted air quotes, stuff who've all been vaccinated because they somehow get various heart diseases, in inverted commas. It's but this is now provable. But still, the mainstream media totally ignores it. Governments totally ignore it. And we're told, no, it's a conspiracy theory. But it isn't. It's a fact. And the more a country was vaccinated, the more people who are unexplained in air quotes and in inverted commas, unexplained dying from their untested so-called vaccine, which isn't really a vaccine, but
No, I mean, absolutely. And, I would, but we saw the rollout for this. As military theorists, it was a trial run, and they've learned, how to do this. I mean, also like digital ID and everything. It is also tied up in this.
Yep,
I saw 100%. This. I saw
no privacy whatsoever for any single citizen. I mean, obviously everyone knows it, particularly in Britain, because there's like a camera on every, not only street corner, but all over the bloody place. There's no such thing as privacy in Britain pretty much anymore. But really, there is no privacy for any single ordinary human being. Like, you can't, for example, have something break in your house and say to a mate of yours who has a particular skill, could you fix this for me, mate, and I'll give you 50 quid. Because as soon as you have, or 100 quid or 150 quid, whatever it might be, as soon as you have a cashless society, all that goes by the wayside. You have no privacy whatsoever. Nothing that you do will be free anymore. You will be totally surveilled by your government. So anyone supporting the cashless society is an enemy of ours, And every single person on the right needs to understand that very, very clearly. There is nothing good about a cashless society for people who are in any way, shape, or form on the right or traditionalist.
No, 100%. And yeah, I would also go on to say that I saw this clip going around of people lining up. I don't know if it was true, but it was people lining up to get like some like digital payment stuff where it's like on some sort of microchip or something. Well, I don't think it was in this country. I think it was somewhere else, in probably the US or somewhere like that. But it was like people lining up for like some sort of biochip scanning system.
Inject me like a little dog with a microchip. Go for it, boys. I'll certainly do that because I want to be like a little dog. Yeah.
And the trouble is, it's like I mean, there's a huge percentage of the population that would, as we've seen with COVID, if the scientists came out today and said eat shit from your toilet, it will make you feel better. There's like 40% of the population that would do it in a heartbeat.
Yep, 30 or 40% of people would have nets in their toilets to catch their shit so they could eat it. 100% right, man. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory Herbert says, AI Shortwave, have you been following the story of Alfred Gungolt, the 98-year-old D-Day veteran who was evicted from his bungalow in Dorset and the council is refusing him suitable accommodation?
Wow.
Oh, I have not heard that. That is terrible.
Well, there you go. That's Britain being a home fit for 98-year-old heroes. Jesus Christ.
I tell you what, I know that on this channel, I'm critical of the Second World War and what it happened in Britain, but I've never and ever would be critical of our veterans, because no matter what the war was, no matter what the outcome, they were all heroes. My grandfather was in that war. My family was, they are heroes no matter what. I think,
please let me add my voice to that. Same. My grandfather went over on D+3 or 4. The dudes who actually did the fighting were absolute heroes. I don't like many of the politicians who sent them there, but the blokes who actually did the fighting in the Navy and the Army and the RAF, those guys were all heroes and absolutely 100%. Totally agree with you, AR.
Yeah, I mean, they're absolute heroes. And I've met veterans, I've met American veterans, I've met British veterans, I've met German veterans, and I have deep respect for all of them, and they all have deep respect for each other as well. Because I think a lot of them realize, a lot of the main critics of the war and the result of it, the information I got, a lot of them from them. A lot of them came from them because a lot of them, trouble with war is that there is no winners really at the end of the day. There is no winners, because I mean, you're not fighting for the glories of empire or expanding. This isn't like the Alexander conquering half of the Persian Empire or anything. The trouble with modern warfare is that there's little to no benefit that you get. If you're a soldier or warrior, so warfare is different. It's incredibly different in the modern age.
Oh look, the British and Canadian veterans in particular, they were not fighting for gay story hour or vast mass immigration into Britain or Canada. None of them were. They were not fighting for that. They were fighting for their own countries and their own women and children. And if we lose sight of that, then we lose sight of what the ordinary officers and men were actually fighting for.
Yeah, they were.
They were fighting for their own country and their own women and children and families. They were not fighting for gay story hour or gay marriage or LGBTQ shit, or certainly mass immigration. They were absolutely fighting against that.
Or even freedom. I mean, I know like people say, "We're fighting for freedom." No, they were fighting for the preservation and the glory of the empire in both world wars.
Yeah.
They were fighting for the empire. That is
and their own families,
Yeah,
absolutely right. They were.
Yeah. So now I will check out that story, Rory Herbert, because it's on GB News recently. I'll check that out after stream and the chat, and I'll see if there's a GoFundMe or something, and I'll donate. Link. I might link. Actually, I'll see if I can link. If someone, if there's a GoFundMe, I'll try and link. I'll put that in the description below, and maybe if people want to donate or something to whatever the poor gentleman's going through, and make sure that he has a place to live.
How do you check a 98-year-old dude from his place? I mean, I just don't understand that at all. Or do they want to move in some boat people from across the channel? Shit.
Oh, I mean, it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful.
Totally, mate. Totally agree. Like I said, the blokes who fought in World War II on the British and Canadian and Australian side, and even the Americans, they were not fighting for the world we have today at all. None of them were. They all would have been regarded as extreme right wingers today. Pretty much all of them.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I do, you know, I think what's upsetting when you hear stories about this is that it's 2023. We're not going to have, I mean, as days go by, a lot of our veterans from the Second World War, I mean, they're dying.
They're mostly already dead, mate, to be honest. They're mostly already dead.
And, you know, there's going to be probably, in the next 5 years, you'll have the last veteran passing away.
Yeah,
quite easily in the next 5 years. You have the last World War
II
veteran.
Basically, you had to be 18 in 1944 to fight in World War II. So you had to be born 18 years before 1944. So 1922. That's when you're going to see the end of it. So, like, everyone alive today who fought in World War II is basically at least 101 years old. Going on that way anyway.
Yeah, and this is how we treat them. You know?
Yeah, chuck them out of their house when they're 98 years old, because probably they need it for some of these cross-channel economic migrants. Yeah. Okay. Well done, Rishi Sunak. You Indian banker, you. I mean, I watched a thing the other day where Rishi Sunak was celebrating Indian Independence Day. What the fuck is that got to do with Britain? Really?
Oh yeah, I mean,
that's not a good day for Britain.
I mean, and also on when he was celebrating Indian independence, I have to say I've never seen Rishi Sunak so animated in all his political speeches.
He's an Indian. He's an Indian. He's not British. He's an Indian.
Yeah, and he ultimately and there's this account, and it's and I'd say people be careful of GB News, because they are scumbags.
Yeah, they're very various. They have that
Yeah.
Twinkie left-wing dude twink
Eh,
on there, and people like that. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. When they got rid of Mark Stein, because he was actually talking about not
Did
just
they get
the
rid
grooming
of
gangs.
Mike Stein? Did they get
Yeah,
rid of Mike Stein?
they did over grooming gangs because
Ah, shit! And he was one of the best people on there. Well, what a surprise!
well, he was the one that was carrying that channel. But and also vaccine damage as well. He was big on that, and he was a proper. I mean, his content was good, and I know in the past he's been a bit of a neocon, bit like Tucker Carlson, but he
did some good stuff.
He did some good stuff, and I'm not going to punish. I'm not going to punish him for that. He did good stuff in the media, and he had Ofcom against him. And the trouble is, he had a heart attack, and while he was off sick, they got rid of him. So,
wow,
that just goes to show. But anyway, they had this new pool of young, ethnic minority conservatives and gay conservatives.
Conservatives, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
conservatives. And so there's this one called, well, she's Moroccan, half Moroccan. I'm not going to mention her name, but
Obviously, totally British, but yeah. Right.
Yeah, and
AI, mate, I've got to go.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for having me as a guest on your channel.
No worries.
It was a great honor. But I have to go because I've got someone at my door. Yeah, thanks, AI, and good stream, mate.
No, that's good. I'm probably going to wrap up now anyway because we've covered all the topics. So thanks for coming on, Iron Duke, and I hope you have a good morning.
You
good
too,
day.
mate. You too. But please do finish your story because I shall check it out in a minute.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, this particular one, she promotes her heritage as she's British, but she's only British when it's convenient, and she refers to Morocco as her homeland. And the problem is, and my point in the response was, that having a national identity, it's not like having your favorite jumper that you can change and interchange. But your ethnicity does determine what your nationhood is. It does. I wasn't born in Britain. I was born in a foreign country, but I'm not. I'm not of that country. I have no biological or family ties to that country. Tolkien isn't South African. By obvious standards, he's not. So, or I say he wasn't. Yeah. So, and the problem is, and I understand this from reverse position, is you can love the country you're in, you can claim this, that, and the other, but at the same time, it's never home. It's never your country, and so this particular person had internalized Morocco as the homeland, and in the past, with colonial, talking about colonial stuff, she has attacked the British Empire from pure race racial vengeance perspective, and that's quite a common one in place. So these people, I mean, these are the people occupying the space at GB News, and I always think back when I see them. I'm always reminded by that sort of Blairite era diktat. We're going to have diversity, and we're going to rub it in the faces of the racist and bigoted British public. And that's them. They're their job, from the right, Ashaka from the left, is to rub the faces, rub it all into them, and they're and that's what you get. But as I say, you always got us here on YouTube, and I like to think we aren't going to psyop you into believing some crap. Well, I hope not. Anyway, we're coming up to the hour now. I say coming up to 2 hours, I should say, and I think we've covered all the subjects. So yeah, that was great, Iron Duke was on. Anybody in chat got any questions before I head off? Anybody at all? Military Theorist or Trickaroo or Rory Herbert, or if Nathan Hood is, if any of you guys still around, if anyone's got any questions. I am interested though, looking into the this 98-year-old veteran Dorset, because he seemed to be a member of Two Power, so he was one of the first to land, to be behind the enemy lines on D-Day. I mean, that's disgraceful. I hope if I'm going to look into it, but I hope people in the local community where he lives in Dorset, they do kick up a fuss about that on the and if he has any family at all, that they really kick up a fuss about this and shame the council, because I don't know, because the council, if I mean, what the council, by what Rory Herbert is saying, the council itself have behaved absolutely disgracefully. Yeah. Right, I think that's about it then. Thank you everyone for watching. This was a pretty good stream. We covered quite a bit, and Roy Herbert does say that it's gone a bit viral on social media. Writing to a council is a good idea. Yeah, I mean, ransom to the council execs, council leaders. Oh, hello, Bilbo. Morning, and also, I mean, you just caught the end. I'm going now, so you're gonna have to rewind. But we had Iron Duke on here, so that was pretty good. So anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Bilbo, for tuning in late. Make sure you rewind and watch from the beginning. And I will see you all next time.